Arizona Territory, 1887. Naya White Elk noticed the silence before she saw the storm. No birds moved through the pine branches. The squirrels had disappeared, and her mare kept turning toward the western sky. A dark wall of clouds was swallowing the Mogollon Mountains. Naya abandoned the elk tracks she had followed since sunrise and turned toward home. Meat could be found again. A traveler caught above the tree line during a winter storm might never return. A metallic crash sounded from the valley below. Naya stopped. It came again, followed by a horse's terrified cry. She rode to the edge of a ridge and looked down. A freight wagon lay overturned beside the mountain trail. One wheel had broken away, and 2 horses were tangled in the traces. A man was trapped beside the wagon with a heavy crate across his ankle. 3 wolves watched him from the trees. The cowboy reached for a rifle several feet away, but the largest wolf stepped closer. Naya drew her bow. Her first arrow struck the frozen ground in front of the animal. The second broke a snow-covered branch above the pack. Snow crashed onto the wolves. They scattered into the forest. Naya guided her mare down the slope. The stranger stared at her through the gathering flurries. He was broad-shouldered, with short brown hair, a rough beard and blood running from a cut above his eye. "If you're planning to rob me," he said, "you found the wrong wagon. If I wanted your belongings, I would wait for the wolves." He almost smiled. Naya examined the crate pinning him. The wreck had begun sliding toward the ravine. "Can you move your foot?" "My toes still work." "Then move them when I lift." She tied a rope around the crate, passed it behind a pine and pushed a broken axle brace beneath the wood. "You can lift that?" he asked. "Not for long." Naya forced the lever downward. The crate rose less than an inch. The cowboy pulled, but his boot remained caught. Above them, one horse kicked violently. The wagon shifted toward the drop. Again, Naya ordered. She leaned against the brace with all her strength. The man tore his foot free. Naya caught his arm and dragged him behind a tree as the freight bed slid over the edge. Most of the cargo disappeared into the ravine. The surviving horse remained trapped on the trail. Naya cut its traces while the cowboy attempted to stand. His ankle collapsed beneath him. She caught him before he hit the ground. "That was foolish. I wanted to see if it worked." It did not. A wolf howled nearby. The storm struck the mountain before Naya could retrieve more than the rifle, one blanket and a canvas pack. Snow erased the trail within minutes. She helped the stranger onto her mare and led the animal toward a shallow cave she knew to the east. The wind became strong enough to bend the trees. Halfway there, the cowboy fell from the saddle. Naya found him on one knee. "I can walk," he insisted. "You cannot stand. If I ride, you may freeze. Arguing will not warm either of us." She pulled his arm across her shoulders and guided him through the whiteout. By the time they reached the cave, ice covered his beard and his hands had begun losing feeling. Naya sheltered the mare behind a stone wall, then carried dry pine branches from a hidden space beneath the ledge. She had stored them there during autumn in case a hunter became trapped by winter. A fire soon burned inside the shallow shelter. Naya wrapped the cowboy's ankle and cleaned the cut above his eye. "What is your name?" she asked. "Owen Carter." "Naya White Elk. You're a hunter." "Yes. I've never seen anyone follow a trail through weather like this." "I could not see the trail." "Then how did you find this place?" "I listened to the wind." Owen studied her as though he was trying to decide whether she was serious. Naya handed him a cup of melted snow. "Drink slowly." "Thank you." "For the water." "For everything. Save your strength." Night settled over the mountain. The fire weakened, and Owen's shivering grew violent. Naya added the last dry branches, but the fuel would not last until morning. She removed her outer hide cloak and wrapped it around him. Owen tried to push it back. You need this. You are injured. And you are standing between me and the wind. That is why you should stop arguing. She sat beside him and shared the remaining blanket. When freezing air entered the cave, Naya positioned herself between Owen and the opening. Several hours later, his shivering stopped. That was more dangerous than the cold itself. Naya touched his face. Owen. His eyes opened slowly. Still here. Tell me why you were on this mountain. I was carrying flour and medicine to Black Pine Station. Naya knew the name. Black Pine has been empty since spring. Owen struggled to focus. That isn't what I was told. Who hired you? Silas Crowe. Naya's expression changed. Crowe owned the territory's largest freight company. He had also accused Apache hunters of stealing supplies from isolated ranches. Stay awake, she told Owen. I'm trying. Try harder. She kept him talking until morning. When the storm weakened, Naya returned with him to the site of the wreck. Most of the wagon was gone. Only the broken axle and several pieces of cargo remained above the ravine. Naya brushed away the snow. The axle pin had not broken naturally. Someone had cut almost completely through it before Owen entered the mountains. A leather freight tag hung from the wreckage. A black crow had been burned into its surface. Owen recognized the mark. Crow Freight and Provision. Naya found an open crate caught between two rocks. It did not contain flour. 6 new rifles lay beneath a thin layer of cloth. Owen stared at them. I opened one crate yesterday. I thought Crow was smuggling weapons, so I planned to report him after the delivery. He knew you had seen them. Then he sent me to an abandoned station and made sure I never arrived. Naya examined footprints near the trail. Someone had stood above the road and watched the wagon approach before the storm. 3 days earlier, winter food intended for her community had disappeared. Now Crow's weapons had been found on a sabotaged freight wagon. Naya helped Owen onto her mare. My people will want answers. Will they believe me? I do not know. They reached the Apache settlement shortly after noon. Families emerged as Naya entered with a white stranger riding before her. Keme stepped through the crowd. The tall warrior carried a bow across his back. Relief appeared in his eyes when he saw Naya alive. Then he recognized Owen. His expression hardened. I know this man. Naya dismounted. Then you know he needs help. He drives freight for Silas Crowe. Owen tried to climb down, but his injured ankle failed. Naya caught him and held his weight. Keme watched her support the cowboy. Something more personal than suspicion entered his face. Crow's men stole our winter supplies, he said. Now you bring one of his riders into our home. Someone cut his axle and left him to die. That does not make him innocent. Naya held up the leather freight tag. We found rifles hidden beneath cloth marked as food. The people around them grew silent. Keme rested one hand on his knife. Then he will tell us whether Crow tried to silence an honest man, his gaze settled on Owen. Or whether Naya rescued one of the thieves. Keme did not move the knife toward Owen. He planted it in the ground between them. If he lies, the warrior said, he leaves before nightfall. Naya continued supporting the injured cowboy. He will not survive the mountain tonight. That is not proof of innocence. No, she replied. It is a reason not to become his executioner. An elder named Hanovi stepped through the crowd. His silver hair rested against the collar of a heavy buffalo hide coat. Naya brought this man through the storm, he said. Until we know the truth, he remains under her protection. Keme looked at Owen. You will answer every question. I intended to. And if Crow sent you here? Then I chose a poor way to arrive. A few people exchanged reluctant glances. Keme did not smile. Owen was taken into a warm shelter, where Hanovi examined his ankle. The injury required rest, but no bones were broken. Naya placed the recovered freight tag and one rifle beside the central fire. Owen described the false delivery order, the abandoned station and the sabotage axle. Several families recognized the weapon. The same model had recently been carried by masked riders who attacked 2 Apache hunting camps. The attackers wanted us to see those guns, Naya said. They also left tracks leading toward the ranches. Owen understood. Crowe is giving each side a reason to blame the other. Keme remained unconvinced. Or this man is helping him build that lie. Owen met his gaze. I worked for Crowe because freight wages kept my ranch alive. I never asked what was inside the crates. That ignorance served you well. Until someone tried to kill me. Keme stepped closer, but Naya moved between them. This argument will not recover the missing food. Her voice was calm, yet neither man challenged it. For the next 6 days, Owen remained in the settlement. He did not act as though being rescued entitled him to trust. When his ankle allowed him to stand, he repaired a damaged stovepipe. He replaced loose boards on a widow's shelter and helped children carry firewood from beneath the snow. He also listened. Owen learned which mountain trails belonged to hunters, which valleys held medicine plants and why certain areas could not support cattle without destroying the roots beneath the soil. Naya often found him sitting near the elders, asking questions instead of offering solutions. One evening, she brought him a repaired coat. You have become quiet, she said. I discovered how much I don't know. That discovery frightened some men. It has been troubling me all week. Naya handed him the coat. Their fingers touched briefly. Owen did not seize the moment or turn gratitude into a declaration. He simply accepted what she offered. You kept me alive on that mountain, he said. I did what was necessary. You stood between me and the storm. You would have done the same. Owen considered that. A week ago, I would have wanted to believe so. And now? Now I know wanting to be that man isn't the same as being him. Naya studied his face. He was not asking her to comfort him. That honesty affected her more than confidence would have. Across the settlement, Keme watched them from beside the horse enclosure. He and Naya had hunted together since childhood. They had crossed flooded rivers, survived raids and buried people they both loved. Many families assumed their loyalty would eventually become marriage. Naya had never made such a promise. Keme had never truly asked. The following morning, a teenage shepherd staggered into the settlement. Snow covered his shoulders, and blood darkened one sleeve. Naya caught him before he fell. Where is your family? Safe, the boy said. I hid them near Eagle Rock. He explained that Crowe's riders had seized their mule train during the night. The animals carried flour, dried meat and medicine purchased by several ranch families. The boy had followed them to an abandoned silver mine north of Black Pine. There are wagons inside the canyon, he said. Enough food for every family in the valley. Owen knelt beside him. How many guards? 8 that I saw. Did they have rifles marked with Crowe's freight seal? The shepherd nodded. Keme turned toward the gathered warriors. We ride now. There may be prisoners, Naya warned. Then we free them. If you attack the gate, the guards will move the evidence or burn it. Keme looked at Owen. And what does the freight driver suggest? Owen unfolded an old delivery map he had kept inside his saddlebag. The mine has a drainage tunnel on its eastern side. Crowe used it years ago when spring runoff flooded the lower shafts. You have been there? Naya asked. Twice. The passage may still be open. Keme's expression sharpened. You know the mine, the wagons, and Crowe's routes. Convenient. Owen folded the map. You can distrust me from here, or you can distrust me while I show you the entrance. Before sunset, Naya, Owen and Keme reached the abandoned mine. Fresh wagon tracks crossed the frozen basin. Armed men patrolled near the main gate, while smoke rose from a stone warehouse. They approached the drainage tunnel after dark. The opening was narrow and partly sealed with ice. Naya crawled inside first, followed by Owen and Keme. They emerged beneath an empty ore platform. Dozens of crates filled the warehouse beyond it. Apache food supplies stood beside sacks marked for ranches throughout the valley. Rifles lay hidden beneath blankets, along with coats, masks and bundles of arrows taken from several tribes. Crowe's men had created evidence for attacks that had not yet happened. Owen opened a desk and found a ledger. Each robbery had been recorded beside the name of the family Crowe intended to blame. The final page listed properties he planned to purchase after winter ruined their owners. Naya found her own name beside a planned attack on a settler's supply wagon. He intends to make me the face of the raids, she said. A second document showed that Crowe had filed claims on Apache hunting land and 5 struggling ranches, including Owen's property. Owen stared at the forged signature beneath his name. He already sold my ranch to himself. Keme examined another map. Several red marks circled a frozen lake above the lower valley. What are these? Owen's face changed. Powder placements. The lake was held behind a natural wall of ice and rock. If Crowe blasted it during the coming thaw, the flood would destroy the Apache settlement first and then sweep through the ranches below. He does not need to wait for spring, Naya said. She looked toward the ceiling. Water dripped from the beams. Warmer air had entered ahead of the next storm. A door opened outside. Lantern light crossed the warehouse window. Crowe's guards had returned. Naya took the ledger while Owen gathered the maps. Keme led them back toward the drainage passage. A shot shattered the window. They ran. The first 2 reached the tunnel before an explosion struck the ore platform. A support beam broke loose and pinned Owen beneath it. Naya turned back. Keme was already beside the fallen timber. For one moment, he looked at the man who had entered their home, earned Naya's trust and awakened feelings she had never offered him. The passage stood open behind them. He could have left Owen there. Instead, Keme placed both hands beneath the beam. Push when I lift. Naya joined him. Together, they raised the timber long enough for Owen to crawl free. All 3 entered the tunnel seconds before the platform collapsed. They escaped into falling snow. From the ridge, they watched Crowe's men load wagons with powder and drive north toward the frozen lake. Naya opened the stolen ledger. Crowe intended to detonate the charges before dawn. We need the ranchers and the marshal, Owen said. My people must be moved uphill, Naya added. Keme looked toward the northern trail. Crowe has 8 armed men. He wants Apache warriors to attack first, Owen said. Then he can call the flood an act of revenge. Keme's jaw tightened. You expect us to wait while he destroys our home? I expect you to choose the fight he cannot turn into another lie. Silence held between them. Then Keme faced Owen. You say you care for Naya. Owen did not deny it. Keme continued. If she refuses you, will you still warn the ranchers? Yes. If protecting our hunting ground costs you what remains of your property? Yes. And if she chooses a life that has no place for you? Owen looked toward Naya. That is her decision. Helping Crowe destroy her people would still be mine. Keme studied him for a long moment. Naya stepped between them. My future is not a prize awarded to whichever man gives the better answer. Neither spoke. I decide whom I love, she continued. You may challenge each other's courage, but you will not challenge my right to choose. Keme looked away first. The argument ended when hoofbeats rose from the lower trail. The wounded shepherd returned with terrible news. Crowe's riders had seized 5 children during the evacuation, 3 from ranch families and 2 from the Apache settlement. They were being taken toward the frozen lake. Crowe had not only prepared explosives. He had taken hostages to keep both communities away from them. Naya looked toward the wagons disappearing through the snow. "Move the families to high ground," she told Keme. Then approached the lake from the eastern ridge. She handed the ledger to Owen. "Take this to the ranchers and bring the marshal." Owen accepted it. "Where will you be?" Naya tightened the strap around her bow. "Following the children." She mounted her horse as the second blizzard descended across the mountains. Before either man could stop her, Naya rode alone into the white storm. The blizzard erased Naya's tracks almost as quickly as she made them. She followed Crowe's wagons by watching for broken branches, fresh cuts along the snowbanks and dark flecks of mule hair caught against the pines. The wind carried the children's voices only once. That was enough. Crowe had taken them to the western edge of the frozen lake, where a narrow wooden bridge crossed the overflow channel. Powder crates stood beside holes drilled into the natural wall of ice and stone. If the charges exploded, the lake would break across the valley. Naya left her mare beneath a rocky overhang and crawled toward the lower spillway. The 5 children sat near the center of the bridge with their wrists tied. 2 guards watched them while the remaining men prepared the fuses. Silas Crowe stood beside the powder wagon. He wore a black wool coat trimmed with expensive fur. Snow gathered across his shoulders, but he remained close to a sheltered lantern. Naya counted 8 armed men. She had 1 bow, 7 arrows and no safe shot toward the bridge. She searched the frozen slope below it. Years earlier, Apache hunters had dug a diversion channel to carry spring runoff into an empty ravine east of the settlement. A timber gate still controlled the passage, but ice had sealed its lower edge. If she opened it, part of the released water might avoid the homes below. It would not matter if Crowe detonated every charge. Naya needed Keme. She needed Owen. Most of all, she needed them to trust her plan instead of trying to protect her from it. Miles south, Owen reached the first ranch shortly before nightfall. Caleb Turner opened his door with a shotgun. "You've got nerve coming here," the rancher said. "Crowe says Apache raiders stole the winter wagons." Owen held up the ledger. "Crowe stole them." Caleb did not lower the weapon. Owen opened the book and read aloud the dates of 3 attacks, the payments made to hired riders and the price Crowe planned to offer for Caleb's land after his cattle starved. The rancher's expression changed. "That signature is mine. The contract says you sold your northern pasture." "I never signed a sale." "Neither did I." Owen showed him the forged transfer of his own ranch. "He divided us because frightened people rarely compare their losses." Caleb looked toward his wife and son standing inside the doorway. "What is Crowe doing now?" "Preparing to break the lake above the valley." "How much time?" "Until dawn." 7 ranchers rode with Owen. 2 others carried copies of the ledger to Marshal Henry Bell in Cedar Ridge. Keme returned to the Apache settlement as families climbed toward higher ground. He sent the elders and children south of the Red Cliffs, then selected 6 riders who knew the eastern ridge. Hanovi stopped him before he mounted. "You are angry. Crowe took our children." "That is not the only reason." Keme looked toward the mountain where Naya had disappeared. Hanovi continued. "You have spent years standing between her and every danger. I kept her alive. Many times. She has done the same for you." Keme said nothing. "Protection becomes a cage," the elder said, "when the person inside never asked for its walls." Keme remembered Naya's words outside the mine. Her future did not belong to the man who fought hardest for it. He mounted without answering. Yet when he led the riders toward the frozen lake, he no longer rode to reclaim her. He rode because the children needed him. Naya reached the diversion gate shortly before midnight. She chipped ice from the mechanism with the handle of her knife. Her fingers grew numb, and the rising wind covered every opening she made. A faint bird call came from the eastern ridge. Keme. Naya answered. A few minutes later, he appeared behind a line of boulders above her. You followed them alone, he said. I arrived first. You could have waited. The children could not. Keme studied the bridge. What is your plan? Naya pointed toward the lower channel. When I signal, your riders draw the guards toward the eastern rocks. You reach the bridge and free the children. And Crowe. Leave him to me. Keme almost objected. Then he stopped himself. You believe you can reach the fuse? Yes. Then I believe you. It was the first time he had offered trust without adding an order. Naya looked toward him. Where is Owen? Bringing the ranchers. Lanterns soon appeared along the southern ridge. Owen had returned. Crowe's men raised their rifles as ranchers emerged through the storm. Keme's riders appeared to the east, placing the gunmen between two groups that had once blamed each other for every theft in the valley. Crowe dragged the youngest hostage from the bridge and pressed a revolver against the boy's shoulder. Another step, he shouted, and the children die before the flood reaches them. Owen stopped. The ranchers spread out behind the rocks but kept their weapons lowered. Crowe smiled. You brought Indians to fight white men over stolen land. Every newspaper in the territory will print my version by morning. No, Owen replied. They'll print your ledger. For the first time, Crowe's confidence weakened. Owen held the book above his head. Your payments, false contracts and stolen supplies are all recorded. Crowe recovered quickly. A book proves whatever the man holding it claims. Hoofbeats rose behind the ranchers. Marshal Bell arrived with 4 deputies and the 2 men who had carried the copied pages. We can discuss that before a judge, the marshal called. Crowe looked toward the drilling sites. Then he struck a match. Naya fired 1 arrow into the night. The shaft landed in the snow beside Keme. The signal. Apache riders rose along the eastern ridge, drawing 3 guards away from the bridge. Ranchers moved behind the western rocks, forcing the remaining gunmen to divide their attention. Crowe touched the flame to the fuse. Fire raced across the cord. Naya attacked the diversion gate. She drove her knife beneath the frozen beam and leaned against the handle. The ice cracked but did not release. Above her, Keme reached the bridge. He struck the nearest guard with his bow and pushed the second against the railing. Then he dropped beside the children and cut the first rope. Gunfire broke across the lake. The deputies and ranchers fired only when Crowe's men moved away from the hostages. Snow exploded from the bridge supports and surrounding rocks. Owen crossed the southern shelf toward Naya. The gate, she shouted. He saw the rawhide line holding the counterweight above the channel. Owen raised his rifle. His first shot struck the timber post. The second severed the rope. The counterweight dropped. The gate moved a few inches, then stopped against the frozen mud. Water began leaking beneath it. Not enough. Naya stepped into the channel and drove both hands beneath the beam. Owen reached her. Tell me what to do. Clear the ice from the left side. He obeyed without telling her to move, wait or let him take control. Together, they broke away the frozen earth. On the bridge, Keme freed the 4th child. The final captive was a small ranch girl whose coat had torn at one shoulder. Keme cut her loose and guided her toward the eastern end. A rifleman emerged behind the powder wagon. He aimed at Owen's back. Keme saw him. He could have stayed behind the bridge support. Instead, he stepped into the open and fired an arrow. His shaft struck the man's rifle, throwing the shot wide. A second gunman fired from the rocks. The bullet struck Keme's upper shoulder. He fell against the bridge rope but kept hold of the child with his other hand. The girl reached safety. Keme dropped to one knee. Owen ran toward him, but Keme pointed toward the channel. "Help Naya. You've been shot. And the fuse is still burning." Owen hesitated only a moment before trusting the warrior's judgment. He returned to the gate. The timber finally broke free. The counterweight pulled it open. A powerful stream rushed through the diversion channel and spread across the frozen shelf. Part of the burning fuse disappeared beneath the water. But the flame had already passed the channel. It continued toward the powder. Naya ran. Crowe stepped into her path and raised his revolver. "You should have left the cowboy in the storm." Naya did not slow. She dropped beneath his gun arm, struck his wrist and sent the weapon sliding across the ice. Crowe seized her braid. Naya drove her elbow into his ribs and tore free. The fuse burned less than 6 feet from the first charge. She threw herself forward, caught the cord with her knife and cut. The burning end fell into the rushing water. It hissed once. Then darkness returned. Crowe lunged toward Naya. Owen reached him from the side. Both men struck the ice, but Owen rolled free first. 2 ranchers pulled Crowe away while Marshal Bell placed him in irons. The remaining gunmen looked from the deputies to the Apache riders surrounding the lake. One man lowered his rifle. The others followed. The storm continued until morning, but the lake remained intact. All 5 children survived. Keme's wound was serious, though the bullet had missed the bone. The damage beneath his shoulder healed slowly. For several months, he could not draw his bow with the strength he once possessed. Crowe's ledger, forged contracts, hidden weapons and stolen supplies exposed the entire scheme. His men testified that he had ordered the wagon attacks, sabotaged Owen's axle and planted false trails near Apache territory. Silas Crowe was convicted of kidnapping, theft, fraud and attempted destruction of the lake. The stolen food was returned before the winter worsened. Apache hunters delivered flour to ranch families whose supplies had been taken. Settlers brought timber and medicine to the community Crowe intended to flood. Trust did not appear overnight. It began with shared survival and grew through repeated work. Weeks after the trial, Naya found Keme beside the horse enclosure. His injured arm rested in a sling. In his other hand, he held a silver bracelet their families had prepared years earlier. "I thought loving you meant standing between you and anything that might cause pain," he said. Naya remained quiet. "But sometimes I was the thing standing in your way. You were also my friend. I still am, if I learn how to be one without demanding more." He placed the bracelet in her palm. "I challenged Owen because I wanted him to prove he deserved you." Naya closed her fingers around the silver. "And now? Now I know neither of us decides what another person deserves." Keme looked toward Owen, who was helping repair a damaged wagon. "He returned to the gate when I told him to. He trusted my choice, and he trusted yours." Naya embraced Keme carefully. Their love had been real. Its changing shape did not make the past false. When his shoulder recovered, Keme began training a mixed mountain patrol. Apache riders taught ranch hands to recognize dangerous weather, false tracks and signs of sabotage. The ranchers helped maintain emergency supplies along isolated trails. Keme discovered that protecting the mountain required more than a weapon. It required judgment others were willing to follow. Owen lost part of his property after opposing Crowe, but the territorial court restored the land. Transferred through forged documents. He returned to his ranch. He also returned often to the Apache settlement. Owen never spoke as though Naya's rescue had created a debt between them. Instead, he asked what the mountain needed. "A shelter," she said. "No traveler should depend on luck when winter closes the pass." Together, they built a stone refuge near the cave where Naya had kept him alive. Ranchers carried timber uphill, Apache hunters stocked dried food, and Keme's patrol marked the safest winter routes. 1 year later, another storm crossed the Mogollon Mountains. Inside the new shelter, two stranded families warmed themselves beside a strong fire. Blankets, medicine and food lined the walls. Naya stood outside as snow settled across the pines. Owen joined her but left enough space for her to choose whether he remained. "I owe you my life," he said. "No, you saved it. That does not mean it belongs to me." He smiled. "I hoped you would say that." Owen opened his hand between them. He did not reach for her. Naya looked across the valley. On the distant ridge, Keme led the mountain patrol through the falling snow. He raised his healed arm in greeting. She returned it. There was no defeated rival on that ridge. Only a man who had learned that letting go was not the same as losing honor. Naya placed her hand in Owen's. "You could have asked sooner," she said. "I could have." "Why didn't you?" "Because surviving a storm beside someone does not give you the right to choose their future." Naya stepped closer. "And if I choose a future here? Then I hope there is room for me beside it." "There is." They watched the snow move over the mountains. Naya had shielded Owen during the first blizzard, but saving him had not purchased his devotion. Keme had loved her for years, but sacrifice had not made her his reward. She chose freely. Owen stood beside her without deciding where she belonged. Keme protected the road ahead without trying to pull her backward. Below them, two divided communities shared the shelter they had built together. No one walked in front. No one followed behind. They faced the coming winter side by side.